there has been an increasing trend of urban flood in India. So let's discuss today about urban flood. Hello everyone, I am Soumya Pati. Welcome to Soumya's Diary. Human settlements are classified as rural and urban, depending on the density of human-created structures and the resident people in the particular area. Urban areas include towns and cities, while rural areas include villages and hamlets. Flood is an excess of water or mud on the land that is normally dry, and it is a situation where the inundation is caused by high flow or overflow of water in an established water course. Urban floods result from the confluence of both meteorological and hydrological factors exacerbated by human action. Meteorological and hydrological factors include rainfall frequency, intensity of rainfall, storms, temperature, and the like parameters. Hydrological factors include existing moisture level of the soil, groundwater level, extent of impervious surface, natural channelization of water course, and the tidal impact on runoff. Human actions complicate matters further through land use changes, occupation of the floodplain, inadequate maintenance of drainage infrastructure, and obstruction of drainage channel through improper disposal of solid waste. Let's explore it in detail. When precipitation happens, some part of it is absorbed into the soil, some is evaporated, and the rest portion drains out over the surface. This is known as surface runoff. When the amount of precipitation increases as compared to the absorption, surface runoff increases. This develops minor systems like sewers, curbs, gutters, open channels. When the runoff increases in volume, major systems develop. For example, where the excess water flows overland to a receiving water body. The interplay between these minor system and major system develops urban flood. As the city grows, land cover and vegetation are stripped away for making new building, roads and parking lots. Thus, the natural storage capacity of the soil diminishes. This increases the runoff water by several times. To improve drainage, channels are created. They change the hydrology and flow regime. Thus, surface runoff becomes intense and short. Further, cities became magnet for migrants. Thus, uncontrolled growth of city happens. This is known as urban sprawling. As population grows, bridges and streets are constructed, they obstruct the runoff. Similarly, backfilling of bridges building reduces the channel section. A lot of solid waste, that is refuse, is generated. Refuse and sediments obstruct rivers and canals and conduits. These developments are happening in our city when we are facing the climate change problem. With increasing atmospheric temperature, moisture holding capacity of the atmosphere increases. Thus, precipitation pattern changes. Precipitation becomes intense and frequent. Thus, flood risk increases. Also, the hydrological cycle becomes unstable, thus uncertainty and scope of risk increases. Further, the microclimate effect of urban heat island comes into picture. It further intensifies the precipitation pattern. Further, climate change will also trigger sea level rise and storm surge. As the sea level increases, drainage channel will become ineffective. The flood water mixes with refuse, wastewater and thus spread disease. Similarly, flooding of toxic materials, hazardous waste dump, releases microbial pathogens, suspended particles, toxins, nutrients, and traces. Thus, endemic develops. Further, due to urban flooding, activities like truck gardening, industrial production, home-based production is affected. Thus, there is loss of property, productivity, livelihood, and quality of life. Traditionally, flood control was done by using flood controlling measures like building dams and other structures. However, integrated flood management makes use of policy, regulators, financial and physical measures to move from traditional flood control towards flood management. It recognizes the full range of interactions between floods and the places of human habitation. The key elements of integrated flood management are management of water cycle as a whole, integrated land and water management, manage risk and uncertainty, adopt a best mix of strategies, ensure a participatory approach, ensure integrated hazard management approach. So, allow me to discuss various approaches towards flood management. Hazard-based approach develops physical capability to deal with flood control. Vulnerability approach tries to reduce vulnerability of the affected population. Policy-based approach tries to adopt short-term measures. Adaptive capacity approach tries to improve the capacity of the population by knowledge sharing, creating awareness, developing early warning capability. Now let's discuss certain terms like adaptation, resilience, and coping in this context. Coping means continuing to maintain to the extent somebody can. For example, changing the pattern of business or livelihood according to the situation. However, adaptation means migrating to a new paradigm altogether, a new way of doing the things. Adaptive capacity means the ability or potential of a system to respond successfully to variability and change. On the other hand, resilience means the ability to make a quick and effective recovery from a bad happening. In the context of disaster management, in short-term basis, we need to develop skills of the local community to cope with the situation. Simultaneously, we need to develop adaptive capacity and resilience of the community. So that will bring the concept of sustainability into picture. Proactive multi-hazard risk-based approaches to develop culturally sensitive and sustainable ways of living with and managing the floods. Then the next one is equitable distribution of burden and benefits of the flood risk management policy and management processes across the generation. Empowered participation of all stakeholders through appropriate institutional framework and governance mechanism that will cleverly design communication technology as a part of social development. Interdisciplinary approach integrate and exploit better across the all disciplines. Include all levels of the stakeholder as well as the national and international bodies. We need trans-sectionality. Government need to provide best and timely information. For example, climate models, weather prediction models, planning and guidance. Then adequate and sustained funding for the projects. Then a level of governance and transparency that keeps everybody honest and protects the benefits of adaptation from predatory forces in the society. For decentralization and autonomy, lowest operational level and relationship with the different levels of government should be developed. Similarly, for accountability and transparency, openness about financial information should be there. For responsiveness and flexibility, there is no need of a proactive government. Similarly, all stakeholders should brought together on a common platform. Then the ability to build on local capability and experience to get the support. Now let's explore about the ethics dimension. While applying the principles in practice, equity and fairness must be taken care. For example, you are facing a situation where you have an option to save an affluent person and a vulnerable people. Government should target the vulnerable people because affluent people can manage their wage. Similarly, the burden and benefit should be shared in a fair way. Moreover, while applying these principles, good governance should be followed. So, I hope you got an overview of the topic. Thank you very much for your precious time. If you like the content, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Such value added content, stay connected to me.